It's Sunday, October 31st, 2021. This is All About Your Benjamins and your weekly mixtape and weekend review video. First and foremost, I have to start this week's video off with a happy birthday to Silas. Now, I know he's not going to be watching it, but one day in the future, he may go back through the archives and check out Dad's old videos, and I wanted to see that I started the day off wishing him a happy birthday. So happy 4th birthday to Silas. Now let's get to the headlines that may or may not be impacting your financial plan and portfolio. And as you can see, just a handful of things to go through. Pretty quick and short this week. The first one I want to lead off with was just numbers of COVID, the Delta variant. It looks as if we've kind of hit the peak and we're on the downward spiral in a good way. Most cities are seeing the numbers decline, hospitalizations, deaths. So we're moving in the right direction, but as the article suggests, we'll have to see how winter goes. Can we maintain the momentum going into the end of the year of having fewer and fewer cases and us getting past it? I talked about it before a couple of weeks ago, just the eyeball test and looking around and seeing kind of what's going on locally. You're here in Fishers, sporting events are back to normal, kids are in school, the schools are not having to cancel and do virtual learning very much. So it seems like locally things are in a good spot. And then if you look at, across the country, you look at college sporting events, stadiums full of people, kids back out partying like they usually do, and not hearing about big, super spreader events. So knock on wood. Hopefully we are on the final home stretch of getting this back to normal and under control. We'll have to see what winter holds, but nonetheless the numbers look good, and again the eyeball test doesn't look that bad either. Talk about the economy. So the economy, the headline is a little dramatic, saying that it slowed, and it did slow, but the economy still grew by 2% in the third quarter. So it slowed down a little bit. There's the headline and the kind of the storyline is it was the slowest quarter since the recovery began in 2020. So it's not even that long that we're going back on. These are the things that are frustrating when the financial media try to make things seem bigger or make them a bigger deal than they really are. Of course, we're going to have a quarter that's not as fast as the quarters before. Doesn't mean that we're on a downward trend. Now, if we start to see this trend continue, then it's something to pay attention to. But one quarter slowing but still growing at 2% is not bad, especially when you look at a couple of the things that they attribute the slowdown to. Delta peaking back up, slowing down some business some, but then also the thing we've talked about for the last few weeks is the supply chain issues, the bottleneck at the ports, things being out on the ocean for weeks and weeks and weeks just waiting to be delivered. Those are things that if you can't purchase things because they're not there, or people know they're not going to be there, they hold off, that could slow down the growth of the economy through the GDP. So that number is still a good number, it just slowed down quarter over quarter. While we talk about economic stuff and spending and the bottlenecking of the supply chain, prices have gone up, so inflation, we've talked about that, we know that, but wages have gone up as well. So, as long as wages go up with inflation, it's not as impactful to those still working. Inflation going up is really detrimental to those in retirement, although Social Security gave the biggest increase it's done in a long time, I don't know if ever, but in a long time. It gave a 5% cost of living adjustment. I forgot to mention that 2 weeks back. But Social Security got a pretty good bump, but most individuals who are living on fixed incomes, pensions, Social Security normally, they don't get those huge bumps. Pensions very often don't get any bumps at all. I know that a lot of our clients are all less wealth or teachers, their pension stays pretty fixed through retirement. So inflation is really detrimental to those, but if wages are going up as inflation goes up, it's less of a big hit on those who are still working. Now, of course, across the board, wages are not going up equally at the same rate. It depends on the profession you might be in, but wages are going up as inflation goes up. We'll have to see how that trend continues. And the last two things are nothing really major, but you probably know that Facebook is rebranding itself as Meta, and they're doing a big push into the metaverse, which is this digital life that I love technology. I just don't see the excitement of sitting in my living room pretending to live a life through these goggles and being with people. Business cases, I hear talking about using this technology to be in a conference room with people despite being across the country or across the globe. I don't think it's that much better than a Zoom meeting, but interesting nonetheless. I don't know if the rebranding is to try to get away from some of the negative press that Facebook has had over the years. I saw people talking about how some of the tobacco companies rebranded their names to try to get away from, distance themselves from tobacco and all the negative around there. So I think that is probably part of it as well, but trying to push Facebook into the future. It'll be interesting. I don't see myself using it very much. I don't use Facebook at all pretty much anymore. I do use Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, so I do have that still, but I don't log into Facebook anymore, and I don't know as many people who once did. So I don't know if Meta will change any of that, if it'll pull people back in. I'm also kind of concerned, personally, not concerned, strong word there, interested to see how some of the negativity, the groups that are on Facebook, how having this metaverse can move them forward, which is obviously not going to be a good thing. So some interesting things coming out of Facebook. And the final, obviously, spending time in the crypto space. Mastercard is partnering with a crypto company to allow cryptocurrency payments to everybody. So the only thing I say there is it's interesting. I share that because it just shows that this crypto asset space is finding its way into our everyday lives more and more. It's not going anywhere. But the other thing I wanted to throw is out there is just, if you see this opportunity coming to you, be mindful that if you're spending the crypto assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, that you've been holding that have appreciated, when you spend it, it is a taxable event, which is why I don't love thinking of spending my Bitcoin via a credit card. Now, getting Bitcoin rewards on a credit card, different story, but actually paying for things with my Bitcoin doesn't sound like a great idea. One, because I'm investing in it for the long term. I wouldn't spend my stock to buy. I wouldn't buy something with my Apple stock. I would rather hold my Apple stock and spend the cash, which is not growing at the same rate. And then also the taxation of it going forward if it's grown. So if you bought Bitcoin, you go spend it, you're going to have to report that on your taxes as a taxable gain, which may or may not be a good thing. So just be careful of that. Understand the implications of spending crypto if this becomes something that you're considering and you might end up doing. That's it for today's video. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Feedback is always welcome. Feel free to share. Have a happy Halloween. Be careful going out and about. Enjoy yourselves. And we will see you all in the next episode.